Somebody just asked me that if sacrifices weren't the entire way that a person could be close to God and achieve forgiveness, then what other forms of atonement were there? So this is a great question. I wanted to address this. Flip to Exodus chapter 30, verses 12 to 16. In those verses, we see that the Jews were able to atone for themselves by bringing a half shekel of silver. In Leviticus chapter 5, verse 11, Jews were given the option of bringing flour if they couldn't afford animals. In Numbers chapter 17, verses 11 and 12, incense was allowed to be brought to atone for the people. In Isaiah chapter 6, verses 6 and 7, Isaiah's sin was atoned for by having a hot coal touch his lips. Animal sacrifices were only one form of atonement, because what is atonement? If we look at the Hebrew word for atonement, it's called kapara. Kapara means to wipe clean. And if we look at the English translation, we see something fabulous. It says, at oneness. Atonement was a way of achieving oneness with God, of wiping the slate clean, of starting over and making the relationship fantastic. Sacrifices were only one way of doing this in specific circumstances. And in fact, the word for sacrifice in Hebrew is korban. Korban comes to the word karev, which means to come close. The entire point of all these different forms of atonement is to come close to God. That is what God wants. It's not the blood of animals, and animals are not required in order for a person to achieve forgiveness. In certain cases, it was helpful in achieving that end, but that wasn't always the solution, and it's certainly not the solution that God always wants. So yes, the Bible does bring plenty of other forms of atonement, and in fact, the animal sacrifices were one of the least forms of atonement. Our everyday life is supposed to be achieving a oneness with God.